So, there I was, parked in my car, feeling the adrenaline rush through my veins. I was sitting next to Lydia, Mark's wife, as we both stared at the screen showing the location of our cheating spouses. They were at her house again. Mark was Lydia's husband, and my wife's work colleague. I had suspected something for a while, but when Lydia called me last week with her suspicions, everything fell into place. We had decided to work together to catch them in the act. Lydia turned to me, her eyes blazing with anger. "It looks like our cheaters have taken the bait and are having fun at my house right now." I nodded, my jaw clenched tight. "Yeah, let's go and finally catch them red-handed." We pulled up to the house, my heart pounding in my chest. Lydia's place was a modest two-story in a quiet neighborhood, the perfect cover for their little trysts. We parked a few houses down and made our way quietly to the front door. As we approached, I could hear the faint sound of music and laughter. Lydia pulled out her key and unlocked the door. We slipped inside, moving as silently as possible. The sound of their voices led us to the living room. I peeked around the corner and saw them, my wife and Mark, sitting on the couch, glasses of wine in hand, laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. My wife, Emily, was draped over him, her hand resting on his thigh. The sight of it made my blood boil. I stepped into the room, Lydia right behind me. "Enjoying yourselves?" I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Their heads snapped towards us, eyes wide with shock and fear. Emily's face went pale and she scrambled to sit up. Mark, ever the smooth talker, tried to put on a brave face. "Hey, it's not what it looks like," he started, but Lydia cut him off. "Save it, Mark. We know exactly what this is." Emily's eyes filled with tears, and she looked at me, pleading. "It's not like that. Please, let me explain." "Explain what?" I snapped. "That you're a liar and a cheater? That you've been sneaking around behind my back with him?" I pointed at Mark, who had the decency to look ashamed. Lydia stepped forward, her hands on her hips. "Get out, Mark. We're done." He stood up, trying to calm her down. "Lydia, come on, let's talk about this." She shook her head, her voice cold and steady. "There's nothing to talk about. Get out." He looked at me and I gave him a hard stare. "You heard her. Get out." Mark grabbed his things and left, leaving Emily and me standing in the living room. Lydia and I watched him go, then she turned to me. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice softer now. I nodded, though I didn't feel okay. I felt betrayed, hurt, and angry, but there was also a strange sense of relief. Finally, the truth was out in the open. Emily started crying, real tears this time. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. Lydia had called me last week, her voice trembling as she recounted finding an earring in their bed, an earring that definitely wasn't hers. When she confronted Mark, he fumbled through a lame excuse about it being his sister's. Yeah, right. From that moment on, we teamed up. If they were going to cheat on us, we were going to catch them red-handed. Tonight was the night. We had planted a tracker on Mark's car, and sure enough, it led us straight to Lydia's house. As we sat in the car, my mind raced with thoughts of betrayal and anger. Lydia was fidgeting beside me, her eyes fixed on the screen. "It looks like our cheaters have taken the bait and are having fun at your house right now," I said, my voice low and bitter. Lydia nodded, her jaw set in determination. "Well, let's go and finally catch them red-handed." We got out of the car and made our way to the house. My heart was pounding, but a part of me felt a grim satisfaction. Finally, I'd have the proof I needed. Lydia unlocked the front door quietly and we slipped inside. We could hear faint laughter and the clinking of glasses from upstairs. Creeping up the stairs, every step felt like it took an eternity. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions, anger, betrayal, sadness. As we reached the top of the stairs, I turned to Lydia. "Ready?" I whispered. She nodded, her face pale but resolute. I pushed the bedroom door open with a bang. There they were, my wife, Sarah, and Mark tangled up in the sheets. Their faces froze in shock and horror as they saw us standing there. "What the hell?" Mark stammered, scrambling to cover himself. Sarah looked at me, her eyes wide and filled with a mix of guilt and fear. It's not what it looks like," she tried to say. "Save it," I snapped. "We know exactly what's been going on." Lydia's voice was cold and steady. "Get out of my house, both of you." Mark and Sarah scrambled to gather their clothes and dashed out of the room, still trying to offer pathetic excuses and apologies. But we were beyond listening. Lydia and I just stood there, staring at the mess they left behind. "Well, we did it," Lydia said, her voice breaking a little. "We caught them." I nodded, feeling a strange mix of relief and sorrow. "Yeah, we did." As Sarah and Mark hurriedly dressed and stumbled out of the house, Lydia and I remained standing in the doorway, watching them leave with a mixture of anger and satisfaction. The evidence was undeniable, and there was no going back now. I turned to Lydia, who looked equally shaken. "What now?" she asked, her voice wavering slightly. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my emotions. "Now we confront them separately. There's no point in staying here. Let's get out of this house." We headed back downstairs and out the front door, the cool night air hitting us like a wake-up call. I glanced over at Lydia, whose face was set with determination. "Do you want to ride somewhere?" I offered. "No, I need some time to think," she replied. "I'll walk home, it's not far." "Okay," I said, nodding. "Good luck, Lydia." "You too, Dan," she said softly before turning and walking away into the night. As I got into my car, my phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. "Please, let's talk. I can explain everything," it read. I felt a surge of anger, but decided to ignore it for now. Instead, I drove home in silence, my mind racing with thoughts of betrayal and the inevitable confrontation ahead. When I got home, Sarah was already there, sitting on the couch with tears streaming down her face. I walked in, closed the door behind me, and stood there staring at her. "We need to talk," I said, my voice cold and controlled. "Dan, I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "It just happened. I didn't mean for it to go this far." I shook my head, feeling a pang of bitterness. "Don't give me that crap, Sarah. This wasn't an accident. This was a choice, a series of choices." She looked down, her tears falling onto her lap. I know, but I love you. It's you I want to be with." "Then why did you do it?" I demanded. "Why did you betray me like this?" Sarah wiped her eyes and looked up at me, her expression desperate. "I don't know. I felt neglected, like you weren't paying attention to me anymore. And Mark? He was there, giving me the attention I needed." I laughed bitterly. "So this is my fault? Because I didn't shower you with enough attention?" "No, that's not what I'm saying," she protested. "I'm just trying to explain how I felt. I know I was wrong, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling, work through this together." I sighed, feeling exhausted and overwhelmed. "Sarah, I don't know if I can ever trust you again. And without trust, what do we have?" She reached out to touch my arm, but I pulled away. "Please, Dan, give us a chance," she pleaded. I stood there, torn between anger and the memories of the life we had built together. "I need some time to think," I said finally. "I can't make any decisions right now." Sarah nodded, her face crumpling with relief. "Take all the time you need. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." Without another word, I turned and walked upstairs, leaving her sitting on the couch. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the image of her and Mark together. The road ahead was uncertain, and I had no idea what the future held. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd barely slept. The confrontation with Sarah played over and over in my mind. I decided to call Lydia and see how she was holding up. Maybe talking to her would give me some clarity. "Hey, Lydia," I said when she answered, sounding just as exhausted as I felt. "How are you doing?" "Honestly, I'm still in shock," she admitted. "I spent the night at my sister's. I couldn't face going home." "I get it. Do you want to meet up and talk? Maybe we can figure out what to do next." "Yeah, that sounds good. How about the coffee shop on Maple Street in an hour?" "See you there," I said, hanging up. An hour later, we were sitting across from each other at a small table in the back of the coffee shop. Lydia looked as tired and worn out as I felt. We ordered coffee and sat in silence for a few minutes, just taking in the reality of our situations. "I confronted Mark last night," Lydia finally said, breaking the silence. "He tried to tell me it was a mistake, that he loves me and wants to fix things." "Sarah said the same thing," I replied bitterly. "It's like they're reading from the same script." Lydia laughed humorlessly. It's pathetic, really. They think a few empty apologies and promises can erase what they did. I don't know if I can ever trust Sarah again, I admitted. Every time I look at her, all I see is betrayal. Lydia nodded. I feel the same way about Mark. He's been lying to me for months, sneaking around behind my back. I don't know if I can ever forgive him. We sat in silence again, sipping our coffee and lost in our thoughts. Then Lydia spoke up, her voice hesitant. Dan, there's something you should know. Last night, after I left your place, I did some digging. I found out this isn't the first time Mark has cheated. My heart sank. What do you mean? He had an affair a few years ago, Lydia said quietly. I confronted him about it this morning and he admitted to it. He swore it was over, that he regretted it, but now I just don't know. Jesus, Lydia, I said, feeling a fresh wave of anger. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault, she said. But it makes me realize that this isn't something that can be fixed with a few counseling sessions. Mark has a problem and I don't think I can be with someone who has such little respect for me. I nodded, understanding completely. Sarah's a compulsive liar. She's always been able to spin a story to make herself look good, but now I see that she's been lying to me about everything. I don't think I can live with that kind of deceit. Lydia reached across the table and squeezed my hand. We'll get through this, Dan. It's going to be hard, but we'll come out stronger on the other side. Thanks, Lydia, I said, grateful for her support. We'll figure it out, one step at a time. As we sat there, I realized that our lives were about to change drastically. The people we loved and trusted had betrayed us in the worst possible way, and there was no going back. But at least we had each other to lean on, and together we'd find a way to move forward. The days following my conversation with Lydia were a blur. I threw myself into work, trying to escape the whirlwind of emotions. But every night I returned home to the same reality. My wife had cheated, and our marriage was hanging by a thread. Sarah was doing her best to act like everything was normal, making dinner, watching TV, and attempting small talk. It was infuriating. How could she pretend that nothing had changed? I couldn't stand it anymore. One evening I decided to confront her again, needing answers to the questions that haunted me. Sarah, we need to talk, I said, my voice tense as I stood in the living room, arms crossed. She looked up from the couch, a look of dread crossing her face. Okay, she said quietly, setting aside her book. How long has this been going on? I demanded, and I want the truth this time. Sarah sighed, looking down at her hands. It started about 6 months ago, she admitted. But it wasn't serious at first, just flirty texts and meeting up for coffee. Flirty texts? I repeated, my anger rising. You mean sexting and sneaking around? She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. Yes, I'm so sorry, Dan. And you expect me to believe it was just coffee and texts for months? I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. When did it turn physical? Sarah hesitated, then finally said, About 3 months ago. But it only happened a few times. I ended it because I knew it was wrong. 3 months, I repeated, feeling sick to my stomach. All that time lying to my face, pretending everything was fine. I know, she whispered. I was selfish and stupid, but I love you, Dan. I want to fix this. I'll do anything. I shook my head, my anger giving way to exhaustion. I don't know if this can be fixed, Sarah. You broke my trust in the worst possible way. She sobbed, burying her face in her hands. Please just give me a chance. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Lydia. Can we meet? I found something else. I looked at Sarah, her tear-streaked face full of desperation, and felt a pang of guilt. I need to go out for a while, I said, grabbing my keys. We'll talk more later. Without waiting for her response, I walked out the door and drove to the coffee shop where Lydia and I had met before. She was already there, looking troubled. I sat down across from her, bracing myself for more bad news. What's up? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Lydia looked around, making sure we weren't overheard, then leaned in. I found out that Mark has been using a second phone. I got suspicious after what you said about Sarah's lies, so I did some more digging. I found the phone hidden in his gym bag. There were dozens of messages from other women, not just Sarah. My jaw dropped. You're kidding. She shook her head, her expression grim. No, he's been cheating on me with multiple women for years. Sarah was just one of many. I felt a surge of anger on Lydia's behalf. I'm so sorry, Lydia. I had no idea it was this bad. Neither did I, she said, her voice breaking. I thought we could work through this, but now I see that he's been lying to me our entire marriage. What are you going to do? I asked, already guessing the answer. I'm filing for divorce, she said firmly. There's no way I can stay with someone who's betrayed me so completely. I nodded, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. I think that's the right decision. You deserve better. Thanks, Dan, she said, squeezing my hand. And you? Have you decided what you're going to do? I sighed, looking out the window. I don't know yet. Part of me wants to try and work things out, but another part of me thinks it's hopeless. I can't trust her anymore. Take your time, Lydia advised. But remember, you deserve someone who respects and loves you completely. Don't settle for less. Her words stayed with me as I drove home, my mind swirling with thoughts. The truth was, I didn't know if I could ever forgive Sarah. But one thing was certain. I wouldn't allow myself to be lied to and manipulated any longer. It was time to take control of my life and decide what was best for me. Over the next few days, I spent a lot of time reflecting on Lydia's words. The betrayal still stung, but I knew I had to make a decision. Sitting on the fence wasn't going to help anyone, least of all me. One evening after work, I walked into the house and found Sarah sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes puffy from crying. She looked up as I entered, her expression a mixture of hope and fear. Dan, we need to talk, she said, her voice shaky. I nodded, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over me. Yes, we do. We sat down, and for a moment there was only silence between us. Finally, I took a deep breath and spoke. I've been thinking a lot about everything, Sarah. About us, about what you did, and about what I want. Sarah looked at me, her eyes pleading. And I don't think I can do this anymore, I said, my voice steady. The trust is gone, and without it we have nothing. She burst into tears, reaching for my hand. Please, Dan, don't say that. We can rebuild the trust. I'll do whatever it takes. I pulled my hand away gently but firmly. I'm sorry, Sarah, but this isn't just about the affair. It's about all the lies, all the deceit. I deserve better than that. We both do. Sarah looked devastated, but she nodded slowly. I understand, she whispered. I've hurt you so much. I don't know if I can ever make it right. I don't think you can, I said softly. I think it's time for us to move on. I'm going to file for divorce. She covered her face with her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. I felt a pang of guilt, but knew this was the right decision. It was time to take control of my life and start fresh. I'll stay with a friend until we figure everything out, I said, standing up. Take care, Sarah. As I walked out of the house, I felt a strange sense of relief. It was painful, but it was also liberating. I was no longer trapped in a web of lies and betrayal. I called Lydia on the way to my friend's place. Hey, it's me, I said when she picked up. I did it. I told Sarah I'm filing for divorce. There was a moment of silence. Then Lydia's voice came through, warm and supportive. I'm proud of you, Dan. That couldn't have been easy. It wasn't, I admitted. But it was necessary. I need to start over. We both do, she said softly. You know, you're welcome to stay at my place if you need to. I have a spare room. Thanks, Lydia, I said, touched by her offer. I might take you up on that. That night, as I lay in my friend's guest room, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in months. The road ahead was uncertain, but at least I was moving forward. And with Lydia's support, I knew I wouldn't be facing it alone. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. I moved some of my things to Lydia's place, and we began the process of sorting out the legal aspects of our divorces. It was overwhelming, but having Lydia by my side made it bearable. One evening we were sitting on her couch, sipping wine and talking about everything but our exes. It was nice to escape the drama, even if just for a little while. You know, Lydia said, smiling at me, for someone going through a divorce, you seem to be handling it pretty well. I laughed. Thanks. I think it's because I have a great friend who's been there for me every step of the way. She blushed slightly. I'm just glad we have each other to lean on. Me too, I said, feeling a warmth spread through me. I don't know what I'd do without you. As the evening wore on, I realized that despite the pain and betrayal, there was hope for the future. I wasn't alone, and with Lydia by my side, I knew I could face whatever came next. Moving into Lydia's spare room was both strange and comforting. We both had our own battles with divorce, but having each other made things a little easier. Our friendship deepened as we navigated this turbulent time together. One Friday evening, we decided to treat ourselves to a night out. We went to a cozy little bar downtown, hoping to forget about our troubles for a while. As we sipped our drinks and chatted, it felt almost normal, like old friends catching up rather than two people trying to rebuild their lives. Can I tell you something? Lydia said, leaning in closer, her eyes sparkling in the dim light. Of course, I replied, curious. I feel free, she said, a smile creeping onto her face. For the first time in years, I feel like I can finally be myself. No more lies. No more pretending. I nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. I feel the same way. It's like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. We clinked our glasses together in a toast to new beginnings and continued talking late into the night. As we left the bar, I realized how much Lydia's support meant to me. She had become more than just a friend. She was my confidant, my anchor in the storm. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee brewing. I wandered into the kitchen to find Lydia already up, sipping her coffee and reading the newspaper. Morning, I said, grabbing a mug for myself. Morning, she replied with a smile. How'd you sleep? Pretty well, actually, I said, sitting down across from her. I think the wine helped. She chuckled. Probably. As we sipped our coffee, Lydia looked at me thoughtfully. Dan, have you thought about what you want to do next? I mean, now that things are different. I nodded slowly. Yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot. I want to focus on myself for a while. Maybe pick up some old hobbies, reconnect with friends. Just find out who I am again. That sounds like a great plan, Lydia said, nodding in agreement. I've been thinking the same thing. It's time to focus on us, on our happiness. We spent the day making plans for our new lives. We talked about hobbies we wanted to try, places we wanted to visit, and how we could support each other through this transition. It was exciting and a little daunting, but knowing we had each other made it seem possible. A few weeks later, I was at work when I got a call from my lawyer. The divorce papers had been finalized. It felt surreal, knowing that chapter of my life was officially over. I called Lydia to share the news. It's done, I said when she picked up. The divorce is final. There was a moment of silence, then she said, How do you feel? Relieved, I think, I replied. Sad, but mostly relieved. It's really over. I'm here for you, Dan, Lydia said softly. Whatever you need. Thanks, Lydia, I said, feeling grateful for her support. I'll see you at home. That evening, we decided to celebrate. We ordered takeout from our favorite restaurant, opened a bottle of wine, and toasted to the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. As the night went on, we found ourselves talking about the future. Lydia mentioned wanting to take a trip to Europe, something she had always dreamed of but never had the chance to do. I talked about getting back into photography, a hobby I had neglected over the years. You know, Lydia said, her eyes twinkling, we should make a pact. Let's promise to help each other achieve our dreams, no matter what. I smiled, raising my glass. Deal. Here's to new adventures and making our dreams come true. We clinked glasses, sealing our pact. In that moment, I felt a surge of hope and excitement for the future. Yes, there had been betrayal and heartache, but there was also a chance for a new beginning. And with Lydia by my side, I knew anything was possible. As the weeks went by, Lydia and I settled into a comfortable routine. We supported each other through the rough patches and celebrated the small victories. It was nice to have someone who understood exactly what I was going through. Our friendship was stronger than ever, and for the first time in a long while, I felt truly happy. One Saturday, Lydia and I decided to spend the day hiking. It was something we both enjoyed but hadn't done in years. The weather was perfect, clear skies and a gentle breeze. We packed some snacks and set off early in the morning. The hike was beautiful, and the physical exertion was a welcome distraction from our thoughts. As we reached the summit, we sat down to rest and take in the stunning view. Lydia looked over at me, her face glowing with a mix of exertion and happiness. "This is exactly what I needed," she said, stretching her arms above her head. "Thanks for coming with me, Dan." "Any time," I replied, smiling. "I'm glad we did this." We sat in companionable silence for a while, enjoying the peace and quiet. Then Lydia turned to me with a serious expression. "Dan, there's something I need to tell you," she said, her voice hesitant. I felt a knot form in my stomach. "What is it?" She took a deep breath. "I've been offered a job in Europe. It's something I've always dreamed of, and I think I want to take it." I was stunned. "Wow, Lydia, that's amazing! When did this happen?" "Just last week," she admitted. "I wasn't sure if I should tell you because I didn't want to add more stress to everything you're going through." "No, you should have told me," I said, trying to process the news. "This is a huge opportunity for you. You have to take it." Lydia looked relieved. "I was hoping you'd say that. I didn't want to leave you behind, but I know this is something I need to do for myself." I nodded, feeling a mix of emotions. "I'll miss you, but I understand. You've been there for me through all of this, and I want you to follow your dreams." She smiled, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you, Dan. I'll miss you too. But this isn't goodbye forever. We'll stay in touch, and you can come visit me." "Absolutely," I said, trying to sound more enthusiastic than I felt. The thought of Lydia leaving was hard to bear, but I knew I had to support her. The weeks leading up to Lydia's departure were bittersweet. We spent as much time together as possible, creating new memories to cherish. We went on road trips, tried new restaurants, and even started taking dance classes together. It was our way of making the most of the time we had left. One evening, as we sat on her balcony, sipping wine and watching the sunset, Lydia turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "You know, Dan, you've become one of the most important people in my life," she said softly. "I don't think I could have gotten through this without you." I felt a lump in my throat. "You've been my rock, Lydia. I don't know what I would have done without you either." She reached out and took my hand, her touch warm and comforting. "Promise me we'll stay close, no matter what." "I promise," I said, squeezing her hand. "We'll always have each other's backs." The day of Lydia's departure arrived all too soon. We stood in the airport, the reality of her leaving hitting me hard. We hugged tightly, neither of us wanting to let go. "Take care of yourself, Dan," she whispered. "And don't forget to chase your dreams, too." "I will," I promised. "You too, Lydia. Knock 'em dead in Europe." She laughed, a tear rolling down her cheek. "I'll do my best." As I watched her walk through the gate, I felt a mix of sadness and pride. Lydia was following her dreams, and I knew it was the right thing for her. But as I drove home alone, the silence was deafening. I realized just how much I would miss her presence in my life. The weeks after Lydia's departure were challenging. I threw myself into work and hobbies, trying to fill the void. We stayed in touch through video calls and messages, but it wasn't the same. I missed her laughter, her support, and the easy companionship we shared. One evening, as I was going through some old photos, my phone buzzed with a message from Lydia. "Hey Dan, guess what? I met someone here. His name is Alex, and he's wonderful. I can't wait for you to meet him someday." I stared at the message, feeling a pang of jealousy and sadness, but I knew I had to be happy for her. "That's amazing, Lydia. I'm so happy for you. Can't wait to hear all about him." As I hit send, I realized that it was time for me to truly move on as well. Lydia was starting a new chapter in her life, and it was time for me to do the same. I decided to focus on rebuilding my own life, one step at a time. With Lydia's encouragement and the lessons I'd learned from our journey together, I knew I could face whatever came next. And who knows? Maybe one day, our paths would cross again, and we'd share new adventures together. Lydia's departure left a void in my life, but it also sparked a determination to rebuild and rediscover myself. I threw myself into my photography, spending weekends exploring new places and capturing moments that made me feel alive again. It was therapeutic, and the creative process helped me process my emotions. I also reconnected with old friends, people I hadn't seen in years due to the tumult of my marriage and its aftermath. One night, I met up with an old college buddy, Tom, at a local bar. We reminisced about old times, and it felt good to laugh and share stories that had nothing to do with infidelity and heartbreak. "Man, it's good to see you back on your feet," Tom said, clinking his beer bottle against mine. "You went through hell, but you're coming out stronger." "Thanks, Tom," I said, smiling. "It's been a rough ride, but I'm getting there." "You know, there's a new gallery opening downtown," Tom mentioned. "They're looking for local artists to showcase. You should check it out. Your photography is amazing." The idea intrigued me. "Yeah, maybe I will. Thanks for the tip." The following week, I visited the gallery. It was a small but vibrant space filled with the works of local artists. The curator, a woman named Claire, greeted me warmly and took the time to look through my portfolio. "These are fantastic," she said, flipping through my photos. "We'd love to feature your work in our next exhibition." I felt a surge of excitement. "That would be incredible. Thank you." Over the next few weeks, I worked tirelessly to prepare for the exhibition. It gave me a renewed sense of purpose and something to look forward to. On the night of the opening, I stood in the gallery, surrounded by my photos and the buzz of people admiring the art. It was a surreal and gratifying experience. As I mingled with the guests, I spotted a woman standing alone, studying one of my photos. She had a contemplative look on her face, and something about her intrigued me. Gathering my courage, I walked over. "Hi there," I said, offering a friendly smile. "I'm Dan, the photographer." She turned to me, her eyes lighting up. "Hi, Dan. I'm Emily. Your work is beautiful. This one in particular really speaks to me." We stood there discussing the photo and then moving on to other topics. Emily was easy to talk to, and I found myself genuinely enjoying her company. As the night went on, we exchanged numbers and agreed to meet up for coffee the following week. Emily and I quickly became friends. She was a writer, passionate about her craft, and we bonded over our shared love of creativity. We spent hours discussing our projects, encouraging each other, and exploring the city together. There was an undeniable connection, and for the first time since Sarah, I felt a spark of hope for something new. One evening, after a particularly enjoyable day wandering through a local market, we found ourselves sitting on a park bench, watching the sunset. "You know, Dan," Emily said, turning to me with a smile, "I'm really glad we met. You've brought a lot of joy back into my life." I felt a warmth spread through me. "I feel the same way, Emily. You've been a breath of fresh air." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily leaned in and kissed me. It was a gentle, tentative kiss, filled with promise. I kissed her back, feeling a sense of rightness in the moment. When we pulled apart, we both laughed softly, the future suddenly seeming a lot brighter. As my relationship with Emily blossomed, I kept in touch with Lydia. She and Alex were doing well, and it was heartwarming to hear about her new life in Europe. We often exchanged messages and video calls, updating each other on our lives and dreams. One day, Lydia called with some exciting news. "Dan, guess what? Alex and I are getting married." I felt a rush of happiness for her. "Lydia, that's amazing. Congratulations. I'm so happy for you both." "We'd love for you to come to the wedding," she said. "It would mean a lot to me." "Of course, I wouldn't miss it for the world," I replied, genuinely thrilled to be a part of her special day. Attending Lydia's wedding was a beautiful and emotional experience. Seeing her so happy, surrounded by people who loved and supported her, was a testament to her resilience and strength. It also made me reflect on my own journey and how far I'd come. Emily accompanied me to the wedding, and it was a wonderful opportunity for her to meet Lydia. The three of us shared stories, laughter, and tears, celebrating not only Lydia's new beginning, but also the enduring friendship that had helped us through the darkest times. As I danced with Emily under the twinkling lights, I realized how grateful I was for everything that had happened. The betrayal, the heartache, and the pain had all led me to this moment, surrounded by love and hope. Lydia's voice echoed in my mind. We'll always have each other's backs. And we did. Life had thrown us curveballs, but we had caught them and turned them into something beautiful. With Lydia and Emily by my side, I knew that no matter what the future held, I was ready to face it with strength, love, and a heart full of hope. Returning from Lydia's wedding in Europe, I felt an overwhelming sense of closure and a renewed zest for life. The journey had been long and arduous, but I had come out stronger on the other side. Emily and I were closer than ever, and I felt a deep gratitude for the new chapter unfolding before me. A few months after the wedding, Emily and I decided to take a trip together. We chose a quaint coastal town known for its breathtaking scenery and serene atmosphere. It was the perfect place to relax, reflect, and continue building our relationship. One evening, as we walked along the beach, hand in hand, Emily looked at me with a thoughtful expression. Dan, have you ever thought about what you want for the future? Like, where you see us going? I squeezed her hand gently, feeling the warmth of her presence. Honestly, Emily, I've been thinking about it a lot. I see a future with you. I want to continue exploring life together, supporting each other's dreams, and creating new memories. You've brought so much happiness into my life. She smiled, her eyes shining with emotion. I feel the same way. I've never felt this connected to someone before. It's like everything we've been through has led us to this moment. We stopped walking, and I turned to face her, the sound of the waves crashing softly in the background. Emily, I love you, I said, my voice steady and sincere. I want to build a life with you. Tears welled up in her eyes as she replied, I love you too, Dan, more than I can put into words. We kissed, the moment filled with promise and hope for the future. As we stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, I knew that I had found something truly special with Emily. It was a love built on trust, mutual respect, and a shared passion for life. A year later, Emily and I moved in together. We found a charming apartment with plenty of light for her writing and space for my photography. It was a place where we could both thrive and create together. Life felt full of possibilities, and every day was an adventure. Lydia and I continued to stay in touch, our bond as strong as ever. She and Alex visited us occasionally, and we made plans to travel together in the future. It was a comforting reminder that no matter how much life changed, some friendships remained steadfast and true. One sunny afternoon, Emily and I were sitting on our balcony discussing our dreams and future plans. She looked at me, her eyes twinkling mischievously. Dan, have you ever thought about starting a family? The question caught me off guard, but in a good way. I had never really considered it before, but the idea of creating a family with Emily felt right. I think I have, I said, smiling, and with you, it feels like the next beautiful step. Her smile broadened, and she leaned in to kiss me. I feel the same way. Let's take that step together. A few months later, Emily and I stood in front of a small group of our closest friends and family, exchanging vows. It was a simple, intimate ceremony, but it was perfect. As we promised to love and support each other for the rest of our lives, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace and happiness. Lydia was there, tears of joy streaming down her face. She gave a heartfelt speech, reminiscing about our journey and celebrating the love that had brought Emily and me together. It was a beautiful reminder of how far we had come and the incredible people who had supported us along the way. Years passed, and Emily and I welcomed our first child, a beautiful baby girl we named Lily. Holding her in my arms for the first time, I felt a surge of love unlike anything I had ever experienced. It was a new chapter, full of challenges and joys, but I was ready for it. With Emily by my side, I knew we could face anything together. Our home was filled with laughter, creativity, and love. We continued to pursue our passions, balancing our careers with the joys of parenthood. Lydia and Alex remained a significant part of our lives, and we often visited each other, sharing stories and adventures. Our children grew up together, forming bonds that we hoped would be as strong as ours. Looking back on everything that had happened, the heartbreak, the betrayals, the struggles, I realized that it had all led me to this moment. Life had a way of taking unexpected turns, but it also had a way of leading us to where we were meant to be. As I stood on our balcony, watching the sunset with Emily and Lily, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. The future was bright, full of promise and possibilities, and with the love and support of those who mattered most, I knew that whatever lay ahead, we would face it together, stronger and more resilient than ever.